Hey, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about how I made a simple 2D game in Unity over the span of 4 days. So to start off the project, I opened Sprite and started working on a simple 2D model that I intended to put in the game. It wasn't really that hard since I already had experience such as Thomas, where the game is literally just built on pixel art. So I got past that part pretty easily, and after I simply colored it, I shaded it, and then I imported it to my game in Unity. After finishing setting up my Unity workspace, I finally imported all the sprites that I made in Sprite to my Unity game. After that, I went back to Sprite and made some mountains for background decoration. As I worked more on the game, I grew tired and I noticed that it was getting late, so I decided to work more on the game tomorrow. Starting from where I left off from the previous day, I got straight to work and I added a UI canvas to add some in-game UI elements. Now that I had a basic in-game UI, I could make the game mechanics. First, I started off with the camera, which I installed a package called Sign Machine off of the package manager in Unity. Basically what Sign Machine is that it's a cinematic component for cameras and it works well with third-person perspectives, such as the one that I'm going to use for my game. After all the fundamentals of the game were finally done, I decided to start working on the chunk system. Basically what I mean by chunk system is when the player reaches a certain point in one chunk, it'll spawn a new chunk which has randomized obstacles to get around. Very genius of me, yes I know. Making the movement system wasn't necessarily hard nor easy, but to summarize it all, I basically spent an hour trying to figure out if I wanted the player to actually move or just have the chunks move left to make it seem like the player was actually moving. Obviously, I went with the easier option, which was to make the chunks move and not the player. So after deciding and configuring the chunk movement, I started coding the way the chunk knows that the player passed a certain point in order to spawn a new chunk. After I made a way to control the chunk speed, I tested the game out and everything worked as planned. Because I took inspiration from the T-Rex Runner game on Google, I made more 2D sprites with my amazing art skills, so that there would be more obstacles to watch out for. After finishing making the obstacles, I went on to make a feature in every chunk that randomly spawns an obstacle for the player to dodge. I tilted the camera a little to pull off the illusion that the player is moving downhill. And after all of that work, everything is finally working as expected. As soon as I finished testing out the chunk generation code, I started to configure a menu system to start the game, also while making and adding a logo for the game. After that, I made a simple coin pixel art thingy that I made in Sprite and imported it into Unity. The next day I opened the Unity editor back up and playtested the game. After I shrunk the game tab, I noticed that the chunks were still active after passing by the player, so I made a script to delete a chunk whenever it gets to a certain point using a box collider with the trigger option enabled. This way I don't have to worry about the collision between the two interfering with the movement of the chunk or the collision detection in general. Finishing up, I made a game over screen in a way to go to the menu screen. Now that the base game was pretty much done, I thought it would be a good idea to add hazards and power-ups, basically ones that speed you up or slow you down. Doing this would also mean that I would have to add more random things to spawn in a chunk. However, I set up the spawn system to where it isn't time consuming and confusing. So after putting power-ups in the game, I made a cool UI animation that slides across the screen telling you what the power-up did. And I also made a way to add the current player score and save it to a player pref if the current score is greater than the current save score in the player pref. At this point, I was pretty much done with the game, but there was no sound, and I decided to make some particle effects with Unity's particle system. Yeah, they're gonna get the reference. Just trust me, they're gonna get the reference. After spending a whole bunch of time messing with the particle system, I moved on to a settings menu, and then I added volume control. This took a while, but I finally got it right after a few tries. I also used Unity's amazing particle system again to make confetti for a high score system I made in the game. So now the game was done, but I wanted to play it on my phone in case I got bored, so I made a mobile feature so that you can play it on mobile. The resolutions of the game mess with the UI so that it has a hard time scaling when you measure the screen size. So in case you wanted to try the game out on mobile, I'll show you a few pictures on how to get the resolution to work on iOS, but I'm not really sure how it works on Android since I don't have one, but in the future I'll make mobile games for both phones. So yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any recommendations or comments, don't hesitate to comment. If you like the video, then like it. If you don't, then don't. And I'll see you guys next time.